Under a sky the color of brass, the land slept in silence. The desert stretched wide and endless, its breath dry, its heart tired of men's wars. A single rider moved across it, slow, steady, dust rising behind him like a ghost that would not leave. His name was Caleb, 33, broad of shoulder, hollow of spirit. The kind of man whose boots spoke louder than his mouth ever did. The sun leaned west when he saw the wreckage, a charred wagon, torn canvas, the wind stirring the ashes of what had been a family's life. The air smelled of gunpowder and grief. He dismounted, each step measured, cautious, as if the ground itself remembered violence. The crows had come already, their cries sharp and ancient. Then he saw her, tied to the wheel of the wagon. A woman sat in silence. Her hair was long, black as crow's wings, matted with dust. Her wrists bled where the ropes bit deep. Her dress, what was left of it, spoke of captivity, not choice. She didn't lift her head until he was close enough to cast a shadow over her face. When she did, her eyes caught the dying light, dark, fierce, unbroken. She did not beg, did not flinch. Her gaze was steady, proud, as if she had seen enough cruelty to recognize the difference between a man and a monster. Caleb froze. Words wouldn't come. The wind spoke instead, low and restless. Somewhere inside him, something long asleep began to stir. He knelt beside her, reached for the rope. Her voice came, quiet, hoarse, but clear. "Do not touch me unless you mean to finish it." He stopped. The desert seemed to hold its breath. He'd heard many things in his life, pleas, curses, prayers, but never words like those. They carried no fear, only dignity. He set his knife to the rope anyway. It fell loose with a hiss, like a snake shedding its skin. She didn't run. She only rubbed her wrists, then looked at him with something unreadable, half disbelief, half exhaustion. He offered her his canteen. She hesitated, then took it. The water glistened on her lips, and for a fleeting moment, he forgot how dry the world was. They walked together toward his camp. No talk, just the whisper of boots and bare feet over sand. The sky was turning violet when they reached his fire. She sat apart, facing east. He gave her his blanket, but she didn't thank him. Gratitude would have cheapened it. Instead, she stared into the flames, whispering in her own tongue. Words he couldn't understand, but they sounded like a prayer for the dead. He busied himself with the fire, yet every flicker of light seemed to bend toward her. She was quiet, still, but not weak. There was a weight to her silence, the kind that comes from surviving. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. "You got a name?" She didn't answer, but her eyes lifted toward the stars. That was answer enough. Some names weren't meant to be said in English. Night deepened. Coyotes cried somewhere beyond the ridge. She didn't flinch at the sound, but he did. The wilderness had always made him feel small, but beside her he felt smaller still, not from shame, but from something close to reverence. He tried to sleep, couldn't. The wind kept whispering through the grass, bringing with it the sound of her breathing, soft, steady, alive. When dawn came, he rose and found the place by the fire empty. For a heartbeat, panic caught him. Strange, since she was a stranger. Then he saw it. Footprints leading away, light and sure, like someone walking toward home. But near the ashes of his fire, she had left something, a drawing traced in the dirt with a stick. 2 figures beneath a single moon. He crouched, staring at it. The wind shifted, scattering the dust, but not the meaning. He didn't know why his chest tightened, why the simple image felt like a promise. He saddled his horse and looked east. The horizon shimmered gold, wide and merciless, the kind of morning that made a man question who he was meant to be. He didn't chase her. He only stood there, hat in hand, the wind pulling at his coat. Somewhere deep inside, beneath scars and silence, he felt a pulse of something he'd long forgotten. Hope, maybe. Or mercy. And yet, as the sun climbed higher, he couldn't shake the feeling that their paths had only begun to cross. That she had not left him all, only gone ahead. He turned toward his horse, but a sound stopped him. Faint, carried on the breeze, a hawk's cry, sharp and distant. He looked up. The bird circled once above him, wings gleaming against the light. For reasons he couldn't name, he whispered to it, as though it could carry his words to her. "Be free, then." The hawk vanished into the horizon, and the land fell silent again. But that silence felt different now, less empty, more expectant, like a story not yet finished, holding its breath for what would come next. And somewhere beyond that ridge, he knew, the woman walked with purpose. Whatever chains had bound her before were broken, and in breaking them, she had loosened something inside him too. He didn't understand it yet, but by the time the next sunrise came, she would return, not bound by rope, but by choice. Not as a ghost of war, but as the echo of something the desert itself seemed to bless. He watched the horizon until the heat shimmered like water, then turned toward home, unaware that fate had already begun to circle back, soft as a footstep, certain as dawn. Morning spilled gold across the plains, and the world seemed to breathe again. Caleb rode slow toward the ranch, the saddle creaking beneath him, dust rising like memory behind the hooves. The night before still haunted him, the empty campfire, the footprints fading east, the small drawing she had left behind. He told himself it meant nothing, but the image had burned into his mind. Two figures beneath a single moon, a promise drawn by a stranger's hand. The wind carried the smell of wet sage as he neared the gate, and that was when he saw her. She stood near the corral, wearing his old coat, her hair braided neatly down her back, strands shining copper in the morning sun. She wasn't the same woman he had untied from the wheel. There was steadiness in her posture now, a quiet command. The horse snorted uneasy, as if it too recognized something sacred. He dismounted, boots crunching the dry earth. His voice came out rougher than he meant. "Why'd you come back?" Her gaze didn't waver. "Because you freed me," she said softly. Then, after a long breath, "You will be my husband." The words hit him harder than any bullet. He almost laughed, a quick, uncertain sound that broke against the morning calm. He shook his head, muttering that she didn't know what she was saying, that a man like him wasn't fit to be anyone's husband. She stepped closer. "You killed your own past when you cut those ropes," she said, her voice still carrying the rhythm of her people's speech, firm yet gentle. "Now you must learn to live." Her hand brushed his, the barest touch, but it felt like fire and mercy at once. He looked down at his scarred palms, those old reminders of war and wrongs. She saw them too, but her eyes didn't fill with pity, only quiet understanding. Something in him broke then, not with pain, but with relief. By noon, word had reached town. Caleb Turner, the quiet cowboy who never spoke more than needed, had brought home an Apache woman. The saloon men sneered over whiskey. The preacher stopped by, hat in hand, words heavy with concern. "This won't end well, son," he warned. Caleb shut the door before he could finish. Inside, the air smelled of wood and cornmeal. She was mending one of his chairs, her sleeves rolled, her movements calm and sure. Not once did she ask to stay. She simply acted as though she already belonged. He watched her from the doorway, watched the sunlight paint her skin gold and the dust rise around her bare feet. The silence between them wasn't awkward anymore. It was full, alive. When she began to hum, the sound stirred something in his memory, a tune his mother once sang when the nights were long and winters hard. That night, he sat by the fire while she ground corn on a stone, her rhythm steady as heartbeat. The world outside their walls could rage and whisper, but inside there was peace. He found himself thinking that freedom might look like this. Two people surviving the world together, wordless but whole. But peace never lasts long in a land built on blood. Near sundown, hooves thundered in the distance. Caleb stepped outside, his instincts sharpening like a blade drawn from its sheath. 3 riders approached from the ridge, hard-eyed men, faces half hidden by dust and sunburn. He recognized them, the ones who had once sold human lives to soldiers and called it trade. Their leader grinned as he reined in. "You got something that ain't yours, Turner," he said. "That squaw belongs to us." Caleb's jaw tightened. He had no rifle at hand, only his presence, calm as the storm before it breaks. "She ain't property," he said quietly. "Not anymore." The man laughed. Everything out here's property. Cattle, land, people. He spat in the dirt. Now move aside. Behind him, she appeared on the porch, unflinching. Her braid swayed in the wind. The firelight from inside flickered against her face, and for a moment, she looked carved from dawn itself. The men laughed louder. One raised his gun toward her. Caleb didn't move, but she did. Fast as a hawk's shadow, she struck the leader with a stick she'd carried since that first night, the same one she had used to draw the two figures in the dust. It cracked across his arm. The gun fired wild, missing everything but the silence of the desert. Caleb lunged, grabbed the man by his coat, and threw him hard to the ground. The others hesitated, saw the fire in her eyes, the steady rage in his. Then they turned their horses and fled into the fading light, their curses swallowed by wind and distance. When the dust settled, she stood breathing hard, hair loose, eyes shining. Caleb's heart pounded in rhythm with hers. He wanted to speak, but couldn't find the words. She finally broke the silence. "They will not come back," she said simply. He nodded, though his hands trembled from the rush of it all. "You could still leave," he murmured after a while, voice low. "No one would stop you now." She looked at him as the first stars came alive above them. "I already chose," she whispered. They sat together on the porch as the rain began to fall, a rare, forgiving kind that softened everything it touched. The land breathed again, as if some old curse had lifted. She leaned her head gently against his shoulder, and he covered her hand with his, feeling the warmth of a life newly claimed. He didn't say another word. He didn't need to. The rain spoke for them both, its rhythm slow, healing, eternal. And when lightning flashed across the sky, he saw her face illuminated beside his, free, fierce, utterly alive. He realized then that he hadn't saved her at all. She had come back to save him. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled like applause across the canyons. The smell of wet earth filled the air. Inside the house, the fire burned steady, and on the table beside it, the stick she had used to draw lay beside two empty cups. He looked at it and understood. The drawing had not been a farewell. It had been a beginning. And outside, the storm carried their names into the dark, promising a dawn neither of them could yet imagine, but both somehow already believed in.